Myself, I have a question for you to think about throughout the webinar. So have you calculated the value of a marketable contact to your business? One of our utility customers calculated a figure of £10 EBITDA per customer per year. Now, maybe this doesn't seem much, but when you realise they had 4 million active customers, but from the 25th of May 2018, they were impacted so significantly by GDPR, they could only market to 1 million of their customers. So this £10 per customer equated to a £30 million gap in EBITDA. And on average, we understand the value of a marketable contact to fall somewhere between £10 and £100, but for your industry, it could be significantly higher. So leaving you with that thought, I'll introduce myself. My name's Melissa. I'm the Partner Account Manager at MyLife Digital. I also have John Lickfish with me, who's one of our pre-sales consultants, and he's going to take you through a short demo later. And finally, we're really pleased to welcome Abby from Auth0. So Auth0 are our Identity Access Manager partner. They offer complementary technologies, which we'll show in the demo, and Abby's joining us to answer questions. So we've built time in at the end of the session for your questions. So please use the GoToWebinar functionality. We'll keep the questions anonymous and try to answer as many as possible. You'll also be presented with a short survey at the end. So we'd really appreciate if you can just spend a few times completing that. It will help us tailor future communications and webinars. So we're planning to deliver a series of webinars, which is going to cover challenges you may face within the utility sector when building out a strategy to deliver a personalised and connected customer experience. So today I'm welcoming you to the first in the series, which explores the complexity of using data in a typical organisation's infrastructure. So we're going to show how granularity and the use of multiple marketing channels lets you differentiate yourself, ensuring your customers remain engaged, increasing your opt-in rate, and avoiding complete loss of contact from blanket yes/no ask. So we recently reviewed the findings from TTI Global's research and many other sources that you can see here, which led us to ask some of the questions relating to your challenges that your competitors may already be considering or your organisation may be faced with, which we're planning to cover during the series. So looking at the statistics, these are the questions that we'll be asking. So in a sector where trust and regulation are a challenge, do you have the confidence to empower your customers, allowing you to do the right thing with the right data? 24-hour switching is impacting customer retention within the energy sector. So how do you retain or win back your customers? The impact of price caps is a challenge to your bottom line. So are you introducing new revenue streams, and how do you plan to market these to your customers? And finally, Ofwat and Ofgem are measuring customer satisfaction. So how do you avoid financial penalties by gaining a deeper understanding of your customers? So first, let's take a look into the typical infrastructure of a utility organisation. Research suggests that the median number of data sources has jumped from 10 to at least 15 in the last 2 years. And this will, of course, continue to increase with the introduction of new technologies such as the smart meter and a connected home. And in addition, sharing of consumption data, consumer preferences, and behaviours in a data catalogue connected to all utility companies becomes critical as we're all aiming to deliver against non-carbon initiatives, eco-towns, and smart cities. So it's key to understand the value of connecting this first-party data. But before I continue, for those of you not familiar with the term first-party, we define this as data you have collected yourself about your customers. And similarly, second-party data is data you may use, which is another organisation's first-party data. And we're going to cover how you can compliantly optimise second-party data through trusted partners later in the series. But back to complex data environments. So addressing and collecting customer data from multiple sources and touchpoints presents many challenges for data owners, including marketing departments, compliance, and IT. And some of these challenges include what you can see here. Emily exists in 3 different systems with conflicting consents. If the systems can't talk to each other, in this example, the marketing system would neglect to select Emily for that particular marketing campaign, where she has in fact consented she wishes to receive the information. But unfortunately, this is captured in the billing application and hasn't been mapped across the organisation. In addition, She has multiple logins at multiple engagement points, which doesn't give a good digital experience. And in some cases, customers have no access to their data or have any say on how it's used. And to top all of that, evolving regulations such as the GDPR, PECA, and most recently CCPA are impacting the way organizations collect, process, store, and share data. So as we're moving toward improving experiences, it's really important for organizations to manage a central view of consent and automate consent capture so that they can confidently deliver personalized digital engagement. So due to those regulations that I just mentioned, most organizations have implemented some form of consent capture, whether they bought a basic solution, attempted to build their own, or adopted new functionality within existing SIP systems, such as your email service provider preference center or CRM platform. But here you can see some examples of brands doing the bare minimum. Looking in the top right-hand corner, we value your privacy, one big button with no explanation for what you're agreeing to. So this type of example, as we know from the latest ICO guidance, is not compliant, but more to the point, fails to maximize the opportunity to get closer to your customers. So in our experience, these quick fix solutions being used by many organizations today are causing a loss of contact. They don't allow for tailored communication, and many aren't meeting what the regulation has mandated to protect consumer data rights. So Gartner predicts by 2022, half of our planet's population will have its personal information covered under local privacy regulations, which is in line with the GDPR, which is up from a tenth today. So as digital complexity and consumer behavior changes, where personalization just becomes a standard, regulation will only get tighter and organizations will be under pressure to provide services to their customers within a highly competitive, customer-centric world. So consent empowers customer centricity. It's the linchpin to collect and use data to ensure you deliver the right message at the right time compliantly. So talking from my own experiences and that of my family and friends, people don't necessarily care too much today about what's happening with their data. I work in this industry, so I do care. I actively choose not to give my data to companies that I don't trust. However, my friends and family are not quite there yet, but the regulators are. They feel it's increasingly more important to raise awareness of data activities, giving us all the ability to learn about our data, which is currently being used by organizations, and they'll enforce the law against those who break it. My friends and family are becoming more exposed to how bad data practice could potentially affect them. And whilst they're not all sending out erasure requests just yet, moving from the right of this image to the left, what's most important to them today, and important to all of us, is that we feel organizations know who we are. We want a seamless digital experience, personalized content, and tailored product offerings on our preferred channel. For example, a vulnerable customer needs to be identified and be in receipt of the correct communication to protect that individual and your brand too. Circumstances and people are constantly changing, and I personally expect organizations to have the digital capability to keep up with my changing needs and those of my friends and family too, should they become vulnerable or have another circumstance. So getting consent and preference right in any organization needs thought, domain expertise, and business implementation awareness. It needs to be managed and monitored on an ongoing basis with a team that understands how it works, incorporating automated processes. The consent and preference management is our core business, and during the demo, we'll show you how you can embed consent seamlessly into your processes so you can focus on your core products and services that drive revenue, deliver excellent customer service, all whilst maintaining that all-important compliance. So I'm just going to hand over to John now, who's going to run that demo.
Thank you, Melissa. So today, I'm going to take you through a scenario with Emily, who we spoke about earlier. She's contacted Lightning Energy, her energy supplier, and she wants to know a little bit more about some of the services that they're offering. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'll be using Salesforce. However, our technology could be embedded within Dynamics 365 or your own homegrown CRM. The integration is straightforward, and what we see here on screen within Salesforce is a case which is being used by Lightning Energy to manage the request. Embedded within that case is our preference center, which shows currently that Emily is not receiving any communications from us. It's showing the data by email, call, post, and SMS, and we can switch very easily across to the purpose of being employed. So here we have newsletters and competitions. So emails are being, we currently haven't got consent to use her email address to send newsletters and competitions. The aim with this consent center is to allow us to maintain granular consent. That allows us to differentiate the communications we send out to Emily, and that increases the possibility of further opt-ins as she sees the value associated with the service we're providing. So here I'm going to select yes as the contact center agent. I'm on the phone with Emily, and she wants to receive news about energy-saving products via email. During the wrap-up of the call, I will click the wrap-up button, but just before I click the wrap-up, one of the other areas I'll draw your attention to is this next consent action. On the right-hand side, this is really easy for the contact center to read and then communicate to the customer on the phone about the next best thing which might be of value to them, in this case around emailing newsletters. We could click yes within there and click next, and that would also be another mechanism by which we can increase engagement with a customer. So I'm going to wrap up this call, and I'm going to put into the wrap-up process that the channel for communication was telephone. We're going to select the privacy policy which was in force, and then there is a statement that I'm going to read which gives the customer some clear indication around their rights or any other message that you feel is appropriate during a wrap-up. When we complete that permission capture, the information that we've captured there is automatically written into the Concentric platform, which is a centralized, which is our central consent and preference platform. So not only is it showing here within Salesforce, it will also become available to the citizen through logging into your portal, or we could even send an email to them, which is what I'm going to do next, so that they can manage further preference and consents. So we're going to pop into the Salesforce Activity Center, and I'm going to start a new activity, which we can see on the screen, which is around sending an email to Emily. So within the email center, second while it just comes up. Within the email center, I've got predefined templates which I can use. And once it comes up, there we go. I'm going to click on a template, and within that template, there will be predefined links built in automatically, which connect to our preference center. So within here, you can see the previous communications which I've sent through to Emily. I'm going to click the link which would be sent to her inbox, and it would automatically load up. When she receives the email, it will automatically take her to the portal for Lightning Energy, and then show the preferences which she has agreed. We can see here that we've got newsletters and competitions are currently not enabled, but it's something she's particularly interested in. So she clicks the newsletters and competitions and saves those changes. What you're seeing here on the left-hand side of this screen is our widget technology, which is embedded into a web page. And this allows you to communicate directly the consent and preference platform to citizens without the need for them to log into our consent and preference platform. So the only ID and password they need is to get into your portal as the energy provider. Those changes that have just been made on the portal are also available to the contact center. So if I go back into the case and I refresh, we can see if I change over to I change over to show by data, it's just refreshing now. We'll see that the consents that have been granted by Emily are going to be showing. And if I go into preferences, we can see those are available. And there we are. We see the newsletters and competitions are enabled. How is this all managed? Well, it's all managed through our central consent and preference platform. So I'm now going to take you into that platform. I'm just going to log in. Give me a second while we log out. The aim with the Concentric platform is that we wanted to make it really easy to create the user experiences that you're seeing within that citizens see. So the changes that are going to be made within this platform, centralized platform, can be made without heavy IT involvement. So provided your data protection officer and your web team are comfortable with the changes being made, those can be pushed out to citizens in a very straightforward fashion. So let's see how simple and straightforward it is to make changes. So just to refresh your mind on the content that we're looking at the moment, we can see 4 options available to Emily. And if I go across to the Concentric platform into the administration portal, it's just loading up. If I go into the administration area, this is a section which is available only to those with administration rights. The web presence, which can be surfaced on a mobile phone or a web page, is driven by what are called content templates. And here we have a widget which represents the content we were just looking at. Let's say, for example, I want to add another option. So in this case, I want to add the opportunity for customers to receive marketing from other third parties, or maybe we want to introduce some marketing about boilers. So in here, I'm going to add an additional label for the citizen, for the customer, so that they know what they're granting rights for. And here, in this case, it's for marketing about boilers. We can also add in positive and negative value cards. We found these to be really useful in helping customers to understand the benefits of granting consent or what they lose as a result of not granting consent. So in this case, if they say yes and they grant consent, we can put a message in there, and in this case I'm going to put a message which says we will send you information about the latest boiler offers. And if they decide that they don't wish to grant consent for marketing about boilers, I'm just going to put another message which is going to say we won't share news about the latest boiler offers. I'm going to add that to the template, and when I click save, that is now available for any customer that's then logging into your web portal. So if I go into the Lightning Energy portal and refresh instantly at the bottom, you'll be able to see the new option for consent available for your customers. This kind of reflects how straightforward it is to make changes, and with a fast internet connection, your customers will obviously see the page a lot more quickly than I am. So here we see the marketing about new boilers, and you notice here that it's already ticked. And this points to another benefit associated with the Concentric platform. These options that are presented here don't have to be just presented through one template. You could present those through multiple different templates according to the message that you're trying to communicate. So previously, Emily has said yes to marketing about boilers, and so it's showing here as something that's selected. How easy is it to create these templates? Well, very straightforward. A template is made up of a privacy policy, a permission statement, and you can have multiple permission statements, and then a configuration. The configuration consists of the parties involved in requesting the consent, the data that's going to be shared, as you can see on the left-hand side here, the purpose for that consent, and then the lawful bases. And the lawful bases, we've talked a lot about consent here, but we support all 6 lawful bases, ranging from consent through to legal obligation via legitimate interests and contractual obligations. So you can implement a consent framework which covers your whole consent strategy and preference strategy. But as I kind of move on, one of the things that I'd like to do is give you some indication of how we're ensuring that what we're capturing is compliant. So if I just go in very quickly into the permissions area for Emily, I can see within this administration portal, if I search for Emily, this is her reference number, and this kind of points to one of the key aspects that we have available within Concentric, which is that we don't need any personal information to store consent and preferences. You store that information within your internal systems, and you share with us a non-identifiable unique reference against which we will store the preferences. And that's part of the software as a service model that we have here at Concentric. So we don't store any personal information. That being said, for the purposes of this demonstration, I've manually typed in Emily Smith's name so that we can kind of just make it simpler for you to follow. Within her permissions area, we can see what permissions have been granted and denied, and we can also see the history. And against each permission change, we capture all of the details necessary for you to prove compliance with legislation in your region. So against the most recent change we've made a couple of minutes ago, we can see where the change was made. It was made on the web by Emily herself, the privacy policy that was in effect, any permission statements, and when that consent was granted. So you've got a track record, an immutable track record against all customers. And then finally, the one thing I wanted to do is, one of the things we're doing at Concentric is not only just capturing consent and preferences, but we're trying to change the way in which those consent and preferences are captured. So it's a lot more integrated into a natural customer journey. So with our partner Auth0, we've built an integration which allows providers who are using Auth0 to integrate the consent and capture process into the login. So for example, if Emily were to come to the Lightning Energy site, rather than from clicking an email, but just directly logging in, and she decides to go to her My Account area, when she clicks the My Account area, what will be surfaced is the Auth0 login screen, and then she will start the login journey for to go in and manage, for example, looking at her bills or managing her consent or anything associated with her account. Now, the key here is that what we're doing is changing where customers are seeing consent according to the journey they're on. So here the Auth0 screen is loaded up. This has got Lightning Energy, and this can obviously be customized in any way as you see fit. We've kept this quite close to the Auth0 default so that you could recognize it. In this case, Emily's going to log in, so it's Emily at demouser.co.uk. She pops in her password, and when she clicks login, As part of the login journey, Auth0 goes off and loads up not only the concentric widget, which shows her consent and preferences, but it also loads up into the screens which she was intending to get to, which is within her My Account area. So it will start to now surface the widget, and this is where you have the opportunity for example, to undertake things like progressive consent, so that you can start to capture consents that are appropriate for customers in a much more granular way, rather than having a monolithic screen which captures all the consents and preferences. For the purposes of this demonstration, I've shown the default, which we've just been looking at, so that you could tie it all together, but I could just show one consent option here, which is still requiring selection, or I could show any others. So here I'm going to select recommended cost-saving tariffs, and I'm going to save those changes. So as part of the authentication flow of logging into the site, we've identified that there are some consents that would be really valuable for her to have. We could just surface those, and then once those are selected, she continues whatever she was planning to do around, on the site. But in the background, those consents have been written to the Concentric platform in a centralized, compliant way. So that's all that's really all I wanted to cover off today. There's a lot more that Concentric can do, but we wanted to kind of keep it quite time limited. So really what we've seen is we've got a seamless way of embedding consent into customers' journey, centralizing that, and behind the scenes, what we're aiming to do is help you to improve the opportunity for customers to increase their consent. So I'll hand back to Melissa now.
Thank you, John, and thanks for covering so much in such a short space of time as well. So I'm conscious we're just running over a little bit, so I'll wrap up quickly. So just to mention at the beginning of the webinar, I highlighted the TTI research, which detailed that customer satisfaction and communication for the utility sector was ranked the 4th lowest across 9 chosen business sectors. And so today we've touched on how you can start to improve communication in the first instance by avoiding complete loss of contact through a blanket yes/no ask, and how you can enhance engagements by growing your marketable database, introducing those granular options that we've shown in the demo. So our clients have demonstrated that an open communication strategy can improve customer satisfaction. So Concentric can provide you with the tools to help build a trusted and transparent engagement between you and your customers, whilst ensuring you do the right thing with the right data at all times. And so at the beginning of the webinar, I asked you if you had calculated the value of a marketable contact. And if those of you are finding this a challenge to communicate, have been impacted by regulation, or want to offer personalised experience, obviously we'd love to have the opportunity to discuss this with you in some more detail. But that's it for the webinar. I'm going to open up now for questions. As I said at the beginning, if you want to use the functionality and go to webinar to type those out, we look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, we've got one question in so far. It's how configurable is the Auth0 aspect?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
How configurable is the Auth0 aspect?
So in terms of the Auth0 aspect, Auth0 is a highly configurable environment. It's an environment that we decided to build against because it's a kind of best of breed in authentication, and Concentric was able to integrate within that environment with ease. So it's from our perspective, really easy to integrate with our software. I'm not sure if
Sorry, we seem to have a problem with the audio. I'll try and get John back.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
Okay, so in terms of configurability, yes, the Auth0, from a software integration perspective, we wanted to integrate Concentric with a best of breed authentication solution, and it's one that's widely used in the marketplace, and it gave us the opportunity to surface permissions in new and innovative ways. And that's a message that Auth0 were kind of talking about in the marketplace. So it seemed natural for us to work together. And in terms of the integration, it was pretty straightforward to do. In terms of the integration between Auth0 and customers' own systems, I'll kind of turn that one over to Abby. But from our perspective, yeah, very configurable.
Right, and one of the key tenets of Auth0 is like we try to build our platform to have extensibility as a key factor, right? So you'll see a lot of identity providers where they have one way to do it. Well, with Auth0, we try to make it in the platform so that you could say if you have very custom requirements, you can add them built, depending on your market, or in Concentric's specific use case where you could have the consent management being done in the log part, so you actually don't have to constantly keep re-adding support for it in all your applications. And back to Melissa.
Okay, so right, we're just getting another one come through now. We already capture consent using another platform, but it's quite basic. And as you mentioned, with regards to the no yes or no response, can we transfer the information that we already hold into Concentric?
Yeah, it's John here. Yes, indeed. A lot of the integrations we're doing, the first question we ask is around the permissions environment that is currently existing. And you can transfer that either via CSV or via, we have a technical interface, which is called REST via an API. So there's a couple of mechanisms for doing that. Projects I'm currently working on, they've decided not to carry that information across because they didn't trust the consents that were coming across, and they want to sort of almost build from ground zero. So yes, we can certainly take it across if that's what you want to do. And the other thing as well I should mention is that one of the typical environments that we also encounter, which Melissa referred to earlier, is where you've got a number of separate environments that you're trying to touch. So maybe you have a marketing system, and then you have you're going out to an email service provider, and typically people, customers we're working with, want to manage, use Concentric as that central repository, and it can work in that model. So if you've got a single customer view, we can manage permissions and preferences against that centralized repository, but we can also work in that federated environment where you've got separate pools of permissions that over time you want to integrate. So you don't have to wait for that utopia of a single customer view to start your journey towards managing consent and preferences in a much more structured way. You can start from where you are now in a disaggregated way, and then over time, as you build up your single customer view, Concentric can work with you and move with you on that journey.
Okay, thanks, John. One last question that's come in. How do I bring the consents and preferences together if they already exist in a different silo?
Yeah, so we introduced earlier this year some linking technology, whereby if you have consents within one system and we have, let's say, a reference to that system, we would hold the consent and preferences as if that were separate from, let's say, a system B. Now, at some point in the future, if you decide that the two citizens or an individual citizen is represented in both environments, you just send us the cross-reference between those two and say, citizen A over here is the same as citizen X over there. We will then link up those consent and preferences within the Concentric platform based on the latest effective permissions, so that in system one, it will have the same view as in system two. So we manage that centrally within the Concentric platform through our linked citizens technology. You just provide the cross-reference and we do the rest.
Okay, Thanks, John. There's no more questions coming through at the moment, but I would just like to apologise. Apparently, there's been a couple of occurrences of the audio dropping out and the screen moving a bit slowly. So apologies for that. That's the technology, I'm afraid, not ours, but the Wi-Fi where we're basing this webinar from. I'll hand back over to Melissa now.
Yeah, so just to add to that, we'd be more than happy to kind of present what we've discussed today on a one-to-one. If you were hearing something that you were interested in and it dropped out, please do reach out. We'll reach out to you after the webinar and we can book a one-to-one session. But thanks so much, everybody, for attending. We hope you found it useful, and please do complete the survey so we can tailor the next kind of webinar that we put out. So thank you.